Please note, the hosts of the Masonic Roundtable do not condone drinking to intemperance and excess, or participating in the game shown here.
Good evening, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page @Mason Roundtable or on the Facebook event page. For introductions tonight, we'll go around and give our name, lodge numbers, and of course, what we're drinking tonight. I'll begin. My name is John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And tonight I am having a freshly poured Sweetwater Tavern Coco Pele IPA. So it's a little bit of a less citrusy IPA than I'm used to, but has a good bouquet to it. So with that, I'll hand it off to Juan.
Hello everybody, Juan Sepulveda from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast. In honor of my Puerto Rican heritage, I have my Puerto Rican cutting board in the back. And I am drinking a delectable concoction fashioned out of Don Q Cristal, Mountain Dew, and some other mysterious ingredients. Caribbean Dew. Salud.
Caribbean Dew. Salud. All right.
You need Doritos with that, man.
All right, Jason, how about you?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Jason Richards, and I'm the Junior Warden of Acacia Lodge number 16 in good old Clifton, Virginia. And tonight I am drinking one of my favorite 10-year ports. It's Messias 10 Años Tawny Port. And it's amazing.
Is that a wine? Yes.
It's port wine, yes. Fortified wine.
Of course you poured the wine. Oh. All right, Masonic news. Let's go right into it. As you can see, Nick is running a little late. There may or may not be a rule for that. I'm not sure. And Robert may or may not be joining us since he has other Masonic obligations tonight. But first and foremost, Masonic news. One thing to share is the upcoming Masonic Restoration Foundation. They're having their symposium, their 6th annual symposium, August 21st through 23rd in 2015 in Philadelphia at the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania building, which is beautiful if you have not been there. There are some great speakers lined up. And Jason, I think you said something about trying to get up there from where we are.
Yes, so it's not finalized yet, but since John and I are only a couple hours away from Philly, we are going to try to make it up there for the symposium. No promises, but as it gets closer to it, we'll let you all know.
Looking forward to it. And Nick Johnson, will you introduce yourself, your lodge, and what you're drinking tonight?
Hello, my name is Nick Johnson, and I'm a past master of Corinthian Lodge number 67, and because I love America, I'm drinking an American beer.
Yes!
Nice.
Pabst
Because
Blue
I love
Ribbon.
America.
PBR. Awesome.
Keeping it classy.
I was waiting for the can crack to hit. Alrighty. So,
hey, next up in Masonic news, it's kind of awesome.
Is it? What is it?
It is. Okay, so everybody knows about celebrating the craft, right?
What's celebrating the craft?
You don't know what celebrating the craft is? Tell them, John, as you pour another drink.
Well, craft beer comes from a small industry of homebrewers who, no, not that craft, celebrating the craft of Masonry, which is a wonderful program put on by the Scottish Rite, the Southern jurisdiction. You can find out more details at scottishrite.org. And as a telethon-like fundraiser, for a couple of years now, they've been having a webathon where this May, In fact, it will be
May 16th.
May 16th at 6 p.m. They will have a live webathon where they're trying to raise money to help with the building costs of especially the House of the Temple in downtown D.C. And they will take donations, have live bands and entertainment that goes on there. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, for those brothers who haven't seen it in... Huh?
What's that one?
Go ahead.
Yeah, for those brothers that have not seen it in the past, it also includes throughout the entire program snippets of different aspects of the fraternity. So they'll show a little video montage of perhaps the building, the House of the Temple. That not everybody has had the privilege of going and taking a look at that. They'll have snippets about the role that Freemasonry and Scottish Rite in particular has had in different communities throughout the country. So if you want to learn a little bit more about what the Scottish Rite has to offer, that's a good program to watch because you'll see a lot of different aspects of it there.
And there's something...
Nick, what did you say?
Do they have secret rooms that will be on the video cassette? I guess that's where I am. Video cassette. But is there going to be actual interior shots of the House of the Temple other than just the stage?
Guaranteed.
You'll have to tune in to find out.
Ooh.
You know what else you should tune into?
What would make
this
it
is
better?
like the 10th time. This is like the 10th time we've interrupted each other on the show tonight. For those of you keeping score, you know what would be amazing? If you could tune in to the Masonic Roundtable for the entire hour before the webinar starts.
That's not possible, is it?
A live pre-show focused just on celebrating the craft. Wait, you can. Because the Masonic Roundtable is doing a live pre-show the hour before celebrating the craft. So May 16th from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern, we are going to be on. We are going to be bringing in special guests. I've heard that Anthony Mongelli might be making an appearance. The band Fellowcraft is going to be here. For those of you who don't know, the lead singer and guitarist of Fellowcraft actually worked with me on the Masonic Roundtable intro music for the audio podcast. And he has actually formed his own Masonic-themed band, and they will be playing at CTC. So they're going to dial in right from the House of the Temple as they're setting up their gear and just talk about what they're doing to further Masonry and music, and it's going to be amazing. And we'll just have a really fun time, so I invite you all to come and hang out with us.
So stay tuned for more details. We will have something posted on the website, the Facebook page, and all that good stuff. But this is our first announcement of having our own mini version of celebrating the craft, so you can play along at home.
We are celebrating the celebration of the craft.
Nick?
I don't have to wear my nicest dress, do I?
In fact, just the opposite. This might actually be a low-key affair. You might see Jason without a bow tie.
What?
Possibly. Maybe.
Maybe. We'll see.
It is
a bow
weekend
tie and a
after all.
T-shirt.
And that's it.
Do you have one of those T-shirts with the bow tie painted on and the tuxedo vest?
Yes.
If not, you will.
Yes.
It's like a mail review thing going on here.
I bought it at a thrift store.
Stay tuned. Will he wear it? Won't he? Find out. May 16th. And last but not least, for Masonic news for this week, we had a couple weeks ago our Royal Arch Masonry episode where we had most excellent Don McAndrews, the Grand High Priest of the state of Virginia. And so during the introduction, the promo for the show, Jason did a good job of capturing a picture of his pin that he struck for his year. And this is going to be horrible, or Jason might be able to bring the image
I'm
up.
working on it.
Okay, sorry. But we now have a handful of these to sell on our website. People have asked where they can find this, where it has a nice set of 3 triangles offset, a 3x3, and God is our guide, and a couple other comments in there. Let me switch over to Jason's much better picture than mine. There it is. God is our guide. It's a beautiful pen, very well constructed.
It's also got a Yorkite cipher on it.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's a gorgeous pen, and the cool thing about this is that it goes to raise money for the show, but 50%, half of all the proceeds, are going to be donated directly to the Alzheimer's Association, which is one of the primary charities of the Virginia Grand Royal Arch chapter. So we are giving literally half of that money away for every pen we sell.
It's a beautiful pen, by the way, in case I didn't say that already.
The skull is not included.
No. How about the woodwork?
That's
Not
very
bad.
decent woodwork right there.
All right, Nick, I'm going to hand it off to you for MMQOT.
Thank you very much, John. Let me first say thank you very much, all of the answers that I received. What we had was a very confusing question, and that was my fault because I worded it in a way that gave two answers. But you all got credit because I love you. That's why. So anyway, the answer to this last week's question was Preston was assumed to be initiated in 1762 into an ancient lodge. Lodge number 111, which met at White Hart Tavern. And then this is the next part that gets a little tricky. That lodge, number 111, changed its affiliation to the Moderns upon his persuasive guidance and became Caledonian Lodge number 325, and then it changed numbers in later on, which met at the Great Eastern Hotel in London. The lodge which he later transferred his membership was Lodge Antiquity, which was originally Lodge number 1 that met at the Goose and Gridiron. So the great people that we had answering the question this last week was Justin Miller of Sacramento Lodge number 24 of the Grand Lodge of New Mexico, Lou Bedford of Palestine Lodge number 158 of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, Jonathan Primo of Lincoln Park Ionic Lodge number 539 of the Grand Lodge of Michigan, Simon Dick, petitioner of Joseph Warren Gothic number 934 Grand Lodge of New York, Christian Dubbs, a Fellowcraft of Westchester Lodge number 322 of the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, Josh Kesser of Argenta Lodge number 3, Grand Lodge of Utah, and Jason D. Wise of Hamlet Lodge number 532, Grand Lodge of North Carolina. And we also had Christopher Croto of Dorchester Lodge number 1 of the Grand Lodge of Vermont. All right, so let's get into our MMQOT for the week of April 27th, 2015. This week's question. We've discussed in a previous question the cornerstone laying conducted by Worshipful Brother George Washington. Let's go even further down the rabbit hole. All the implements, including the silver trowel, marble gavel, and working tools, were crafted by this brother. Your question, who was this craftsman, and where was he a member? Your bonus question is, where is the Washington trowel currently displayed, and who owns it? When you have an answer, send it to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your name and number, and also the hashtag MMQOT, MQ, whatever, anything you want, baby, because I love you. And that's it.
Very nice. Thank you very much for everything you do, Nick. Your questions always thrill and amaze. Okay, moving on to this week's topic. Alcohol and Masonry, in case you haven't guessed. And what's really interesting is the history that Masonry has with alcohol, in the sense of really the roots of, for Americans at least, the colonial Freemasonry revolution and movement actually came from and sprouted from the taverns of the time. Before the internet, people got their news and information and communicated with people at taverns. They were social hubs. They were places of ideas. They were areas for trade, and so the tavern served much more than a tavern does today, as far as a political, as far as a communicative medium. And so, obviously, while you're there, you might as well have a beer. So there was a different view of alcohol as far as the social lubricant of the time to spark communication, to spark brotherhood, and so forth. So,
and actually, interestingly enough, this ties back into our Enlightenment philosophy episode from last week.
Very true.
Where you had all of these revolutionary ideas like separation of powers, separation of church and state, and the local pub or tavern was a safe place to gather and actually talk about that. And we had people meeting in taverns, expressing these ideas of liberty and equality, and that grew into fraternity. And it's only natural that when the Premier Grand Lodge was actually founded in 1717, the 4 Grand Lodges that made it up all met in separate taverns.
That's a very good point, because we oftentimes take for granted the ease with which we can communicate across the country and across the world with other people that are like-minded. It wasn't as easy at one point, especially for people like me that were born in the late 80s. For you to know the dynamics of communication. The spreading of ideas wasn't something that you had a hashtag for or a little meme to spread the idea. To spread the idea, you have to look other men in the face in a common place and spend some time articulating elegantly what your thought was. So that's what's one place where we can do that today.
Right, that's a good point. And just the other little historical piece I'll add before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode too is the Green Dragon Tavern, which was really the hosting unit of the Sons of Liberty, which led the revolution. That was there in Boston, and eventually was handed down to St. Andrew's Lodge. So, again, this is a birthplace of Masonry, literally, for that lodge. And so, one question I had to lead into alcohol and Masonry in general is, does your jurisdiction have any rules for or against alcohol and lodge business? And I'll start with Nick.
Sure, John. Let me pull up my code, but I'm going to be doing this a little bit from memory. But if I remember correctly, alcohol is not allowed in the actual lodge room, except for, and this is in a legal term, ceremonial purposes, and I mean legal as in Masonic law. So it means that it has to be for ceremonial purpose. So a table lodge, something like that, and then also, I think there's another rule that says that if you own something jointly with a establishment that sells alcohol, the part that sells the alcohol has to be clearly distinguished from anything that is related to lodge functions. So one half has to be separated from the other half. But I think that's, I'd have to look through the rules, but it's very cut and dry, but it's also very much a local lodge thing. But at the same time, we've been given this really nice list of guidances to kind of understand when and how alcohol may be permitted within the lodge room itself. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of an interesting state, considering that Volstead was in fact a representative from the state of Minnesota, and his act, the Volstead Act, was the enabling act for prohibition.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
so there you go.
How about you, Juan? Anything?
That's a piece of crazy knowledge for anyone keeping track.
Yeah. Well, here in Florida, the lodges are not allowed to have any alcoholic drinks in the premises, not even for cooking. The only reason and the only exception is for ceremonial purposes, and if I'm not mistaken, it's only for appendant bodies. So blue lodges can't have alcohol in their premises. And I have heard the argument going back and forth to try to see if that could be relaxed to, at the very least, allow people who rent the facilities. Let's say a wedding comes and tries to rent the facilities. It's a hindrance because most weddings are going to want to have alcoholic beverages within it. And some people argue that we are not taking advantage of that opportunity to raise funds because we don't allow alcohol in lodge, period. So
Interesting. So that's actually very similar to the way it is in Virginia, where the Virginia Code, again, says it's completely prohibited for lodge functions on the entire premises. So that includes the building, the social hall, and really the property. So
It's even for non-lodge functions, I believe.
Correct, but definitely, they explicitly say, for lodge functions. So that technically means even in the trunk of your car, shouldn't have that on the premises. Also, they did have the later in the 90s have a amendment to that to add a clause adding that if you do rent out your social halls for the purposes of, say, a wedding, that is allowed, but it within the laws and regulations of the area, right? So just to make sure that you're not, going against any liquor license laws or anything like that. But the thing I wanted to highlight early on was, while I fully endorse the actions and edicts of our Grand Lodge, that the rules that were set are over 30 years old, and if you really step back and look at the how eras and generations do change, especially think about microbrewing, right? And think about homebrewing and the microbrew movement that's been going on. There's been a definite burst over the past 20 years since these tight rules were set, and basically brothers that maybe had a common interest like homebrewing can't do that at the lodge anymore. Now there are in our area homebrewing clubs that say like the Shriners, but again it's taking away from the Blue Lodge area where again if people are trying to temper themselves, that might be something that they're just flat out prohibited on doing.
And that's an interesting point when you talk about temperance, because as we know, one of the main duties of the junior warden is to govern the craft and guard against things like intemperance and excess. And really, when you take alcohol completely off the premises, it doesn't really give that brother a chance to enforce those duties. And I know that's poor logic. But it is something to note that you have an entire officer in your line who is almost solely devoted to making sure that everybody in the craft is taking care of themselves. The other thing I'll say is I think microbrewing and masonry go hand in hand, because what are microbrews? They are craft brews. I'm just saying.
The rawest form of alchemical transformation, correct?
And we'll get to that. Yeah, it's 21st century alchemy at its best.
That's right.
So John, when you make homebrew, I know I'm skipping ahead, but do you put little particles of stone inside each bottle just to have a little bit more craft in there?
A little bit more craft. Yeah, I chisel away. Put a little bit in.
But it's a good point that you brought up about discussing getting the proper permits and things like that. It's one of those that part of the guidance that we've been given is that you need to follow the liquor laws, but also your insurance policy had better cover that kind of activity as well. And so, it's one of those that if you are going to partake in anything like this, it does involve a little bit of research, at least to understand what your liquor laws are in your local jurisdiction, not just your state, but your county, and oftentimes your city. Everybody has something different because, when they made Prohibition, it was a very confusing set of rules that was national, state, county. So you'd have dry counties, wet counties, and then even cities within those counties would be dry or wet. So, it gets very confusing very quickly. And so, it's one of those that there always is that concern, that somebody is going to be a little bit too, free-flowing with the alcohol. So a lot of bodies out here will actually go to an actual establishment that can serve liquor, and they'll use them because then they'll have the liquor license, so then they don't have to think about any of that stuff. You don't have to worry about the over.
So counterpoint to that, though. Again, if you're going to imbibe, wouldn't you rather trust brothers to be with you than strangers? Or I understand the whole liquor license thing, and there's a profit model for those bars and establishments to make sure that people are not above their limit. But at the same time, if we had those things present in the care of brothers, making sure the junior warden does his job, what he's entitled to do, then what's the big deal, right? And actually, I'll go forth and say it's not the case in all places for Masonry. So we're just talking about 3 different state jurisdictions on this show. Jason and I have a friend and brother who's on a temporary duty over to New South Wales, Australia, and before every lodge meeting, there's a table spread full of scotch, right? They have a very heavy Scottish influence over the lodges. Many of their brethren still wear kilts to lodges, but that's part of the social event, is to drink your scotch before the meeting, go into the meeting, and off you go.
It makes listening to the reading of the minutes a bit easier.
I'm sure it does. I wanted to.
Well, it's. Oh, go ahead, Juan.
Very quick, I wanted to mention that I was one thing that early on when I joined Masonry, I started reading Spanish books about Freemasonry. I know I've mentioned this in the program before, but there was one thing that I found so interesting, and it was that they were table lodges, and they were actual procedures and ceremonies and rituals that happened at the table, and they were in the presence of alcoholic beverages, and the alcoholic beverages played a role basically in the fellowship. Those brothers that had the privilege of being part of those ceremonies had the opportunity to exercise temperance. They had the.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, it's kind of interesting is actually if you attend a table lodge, and many lodges out here actually perform table lodges, in many different places, and my council like.
Thanks to you, Nick.
I know.
Yay, Nick!
You brought him back.
No. Well, luckily it was a dude from Duluth who actually brought it back, and I steal because, as Steve Jobs said, great artists, or good artists create, great artists steal. That's why I'm a great artist. But anyway,
Calling me a thief.
it's kind of interesting. Yeah. But it's kind of interesting. Is like there's actually a program here in Minnesota that you can use as long as you go through all the steps, blah blah blah, that we already discussed before. And once you get to that point, it's a entered apprentice table lodge that you can actually perform the entire thing, the entire entered apprentice degree, within the confines of a table lodge.
Wow.
It's awesome. I know.
So
because I've done one before.
So what does table lodges have to do with alcohol, Nick?
Well, you see, they actually will have alcohol on the actual table, and what you do is you will. It's a very much a military tavern.
But
idea,
I thought alcohol was banned.
Oh, I'm sorry. Not here, baby.
So,
But
just
yeah.
to be full disclosure, Virginia also allows alcohol only at table lodges
Yep.
and other, appendant bodies that may need them.
And if you
And
haven't
are
ever
they
been to a
open?
table lodge, it is an amazing experience. It's just a lot of fun. It usually happens with some sort of dinner or festive board, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I love them. They're the best. They're pretty much one of my favorite things to do. But now in Virginia, are they always open, the table lodges? Do you have
Only
closed
for
table lodges?
They are for entered apprentices and above.
Yeah.
They're not open, but they're open-ish.
It's the only stuff we're allowed to do on the first
Sure.
degree.
Because in Minnesota, we actually both. Oh, I'm sorry.
Wow.
But
Another reason why Minnesota is awesome.
I know, Minnesota nice, but it's kind of funny. Yeah, I actually was master, and we had performed at an entered apprentice table lodge, and it's one of those that we had all kinds of grand dignitaries show up. The candidates loved it. I mean, they stuck around. They're still in the lodge and still very active. Nothing got out of hand because we were very focused on that. We had all the dots, all the I's dotted, T's crossed, J's dotted, everything. We had it all. And it was fun. And the thing is, it flows because the way in which, and I wish Robert was here because he would probably explain it better than I will, but if you look at a couple of old exposés of Masonic ritual, they actually would perform the degree in the form of a table lodge. So you would have a degree, you'd go through the degree, and then once the candidate was all done with whatever, he'd sit down at the table, listen to the lectures. Imagine this, sitting down at the lectures, you have the two stewards in the lodge walking around, refilling those tankards, because delish, and you can just sit there and listen to the lecture without, dying, because we all know that feeling.
Wow.
And it's amazing. It's the best. So, if you are able to and you're in a state that allows for those, try one out. It will change everything you think about in everything that's Masonic.
Hey, John, Patriot actually tries to do, one table lodge a year?
Absolutely. It's something that probably is often underdone in Virginia, but we have that as authorized ritual, so why not? And one thing that, this could be its own show, really, of what table lodges are and what the benefit is, but because of the toasts that come with that, we do a lot of pride of country, pride of George Washington, etc., that we do try to align that to Veterans Day and keep that patriotic spirit along with our table lodge, with a firing glass where we have usually wine at our table lodges, and every toast we'll fill up the glass, give a toast, and then imbibe and pound the firing glass on the table. So it's a beautiful sight if you haven't seen it, but Jason again said, go if you haven't had a chance this point.
And they're really fun, and they use a lot of military terms. I mean, it was one of those that it was a ceremony often used by traveling regiments. And so, I mean, when you're filling the glasses, it's priming or charging your cannons. And so then it's, my wife, because in Minnesota we can actually do open table lodges. My wife calls it the Masonic drinking game. She loves it. She thinks it's the greatest thing on earth. She's like, you guys should do this all the time. And I'm like, yeah.
We do. Now, I have a question for you, brothers. Where do you think this resistance to allowing alcohol comes? Do you think it's directly from prohibition, or do you think it comes from somewhere else?
I think it started as a prohibition era, good Templar kind of thing, where people were very worried about alcohol being present in these wholesome organizations, etc., like that. But now I think it's more of a concern of liability, things like that. And it's one of those that there is always that concern that people aren't following the rules or not getting their paperwork filled out properly, and then liability exists. So I think it's changed from what it originally was, because originally it was, we got to get those poor sinners out of the bottle, but now it's very much a fear of other things.
You see, that makes me. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to derail the conversation, so make your point.
All right. Well, that makes me as sad as seeing handrails and fluorescent paint on medieval castles. When it's like they're not meant to be there. Yes, people are gonna fall and get hurt. Then, let them get hurt.
It's bringing things down to the lowest common denominator. Let's call it for what it is, right?
Yeah.
That we've alluded to it a couple times already in this episode, where we need to give people the chance to be temperate on what their vice is. So, to that point, I don't really see in our laws a non-smoking prohibition, right? So, lodges still to this day are, wholly owned and independently run, and so yes, people can smoke inside the lodge buildings. Now, if I'm not a smoker, and I'm not, I could get secondhand smoke, right? And that's even worse, because I don't have a choice of what I breathe in that lodge room, right? But
the case for tying it back to people smoking in lodge is going to be a little bit harder than a drunk driver who just came
totally.
to lodge.
Oh, I wasn't even going there, right?
Right.
But you bring up a good point.
It's a liability thing.
Well, okay, so let's go beyond liability, right? Let's go to what about the brothers who choose not to drink? Is there a social thing where they're going to feel awkward or out of place, that if we were to have drinking in lodge, that they would feel out of place not participating?
There is a way to fix that. We actually will do that in our table lodges. What we will do is we will have both an alcoholic choice, but we also, more often than not, we have more of the non-alcoholic than we do of the alcoholic, just because people don't want to drink that much. So they'll have a few, like a couple, like one or two of the one, and then they'll just stick with the fake bubbly, whatever that stuff's called, that you drink with your kids on January 1st.
New Year's Eve, yeah.
Cider.
Yeah. I mean, the fake bubbly. It's kind of weird tasting, but I think that's there is ways to make everybody feel involved, as long as it's not making the drinking the focus or the imbibing of alcohol the focus of the event, but the fraternity and the brotherhood and the food and everything all together. Then people don't really feel left out. I mean, we have a few in my lodge that they don't drink. That's just, they don't do it at all. And we totally make, all kinds of accommodations to that, and nobody feels out of place. So as long as you're making sure that you're not focusing on the fact that, oh, look at us, we can have a bottle of wine now, ha ha ha. Yeah. That's not the point. The point is, making it a fraternal experience, and that's what the beauty of a table lodge is that it makes a fraternal experience for everyone in the lodge. And if you have an open table lodge, everybody present. I mean, everybody has fun.
And to that point, in the table lodges in Virginia, we'll actually also have grape juice for anybody who doesn't want to imbibe. It's like my Presbyterian communion upbringing. It's like you've got the grape juice in the middle and the wine, and you can pick whichever you want. And if you're a kid, don't go for the wine. I digress. But I did run downstairs real quick because I wanted to show you all an example of a firing glass. I know we talked about it a little bit, but this is a firing glass from Acacia Lodge, from a table lodge they had a number of years ago. And you can see actually the base is just really, really solid. I mean, it's a good 3/4 of an inch thick. And the idea is you slam it down on the table, and that is how you finish your toasting. And they do things called rolling fire, where you finish your toast and you take your wine or grape juice, and then it goes around the table, or is supposed to go around the table. And it's a pretty neat tradition, and it just makes it a lot of fun for everybody.
That's an additional element of ritual. You know, when you extrapolate rituals to society, some of the great conversations I've had about family life, about business, about religion, and about masonry, I've usually had with a brother or a friend and a drink beside us. You know, John was, I had the privilege of having John here in my home, and we were sitting in our living room having a nice drink, and not to the point of excess or intemperance. It was just a bonding moment. We were able to share a drink together and really talk about meaningful things. You know, just the presence of alcohol doesn't automatically topple someone over to a dark recess of their life.
So, yeah, and by the way, that was a great time that I had in the short time that we got a chance to visit. But one thing I want to add to that, I just recently read an article. I'll try to find that and put that in the show notes, where it was scientifically proven that after one drink, you will look more appealing to other people.
You looked handsome that night. I gotta say.
So you had going to lot too many drinks at that point. But if you have 2 drinks or more, then you become less attractive. So it's that 1 to 2 drink minimum that really just is that sweet spot for. I don't know if it's just bringing out certain, facial muscles or anything like that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. You look marvelous.
You look
wow,
amazing.
That was a really old Billy Crystal. Holy smokes, that was terrible. But actually, I was going to mention, you were talking about New South Wales and the friend that you have there. The interesting thing is actually in Scotland, under the Scottish Constitution, one of the lodge offices, and this will blow your minds even more,
bartender?
is called the bar steward.
No way.
He is literally a paid position of the lodge, who is also a member, who serves alcohol at the lodge-owned bar. Yeah. It's the most beautiful sounding place I've ever heard in my entire life. And if they had houses available, I would live there.
You mean I could do that instead of being Tyler for Patriot and getting paid to sit outside for every meeting with a sword?
You could get paid to pour beer.
Yes. John, I got gypped.
Plus, if.
Go move to Scotland. Okay, Jason, why don't we switch over to social media and see what our fellow imbibers are discussing? Because we have a few.
Well, first and foremost, we had Eric Glover, who's awaiting his interview process. So congratulations, Eric, on making the decision to petition in the first place. I think if you have half as much fun as each of us here on the show has had so far with Masonry, then I think you're going to have the time of your life. So congratulations. I hope the interview goes well, and I hope you have a lot of fun in your degrees. But he was going to say, my understanding is that often brothers get together informally after the lodge is done. So is it okay to imbibe then? And yeah, I mean that's the way I think a lot of people get around the no alcohol on the premises thing, because at Acacia we always go across the street to a restaurant in Clifton and have a drink or two before going home.
Same thing for Patriot Lodge. During the formative years, we met at a hotel, had our meeting in one of the ballrooms, but because the hotel also has a hotel bar, it was convenient to leave the ballroom, walk over to the hotel bar, and there you go.
Mm-hmm.
What else, Jason?
Let's see. Okay, I do have to share this because this is awesome. Simon Dick, one of our faithful watchers, asked us what tonight's show topic was, and showed us what he is imbibing tonight. And I have to say, milk and Oreos is probably the best drink-food combination ever. And I will take that over alcohol any day. But yeah,
not to excess.
Not to excess, yes. Yes, I have to circumscribe my waistline and keep my belt in due bounds.
Yeah. I really needed to think about that when I bought my my new Knight Templar uniform.
You're
Because
nude.
yeah, it's not working so well.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, we had a lot of different brethren saying they were running out to the store to go get a quick beverage, and again, the hosts of TMR do not condone actually, participating in any said games. But one thing that someone brought up on the page was that Bill Wilson, who was the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, was allegedly a Freemason himself. Now, Juan and I have tried looking that up, and while I don't necessarily doubt that assertion, the articles we came up with online were pretty shady at
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, we try to find a good source, but nothing that we would pass to you as fact. We'll keep on looking. If we find something it's good, we'll share it. Jason, if I may, I wanted to mention very quick. I got a message from Brother Richard Zarth,
Mhm.
and he had a question about when and how can we get the pin, the one that we got for.
Oh yeah,
that we-
Good catch.
Yeah, I had a private message from a brother as well. So we will put that up on the website within the next couple days, and I'll announce it on the Facebook page. Listen, we've got plenty of them. Most Excellent Don McAndrews was very gracious in giving us a good chunk of those. So don't worry, we'll put it up. We're still in the process of configuring the online store so that we can divide out the stuff that we're going to be giving to the Alzheimer's Association. But you'll get them, and they'll still be there, I promise.
So I'm 95% sure it will be on theMasonicRoundtable.com/shop SHOP.
Yeah,
Where
and
you
that's
can
where
buy
we
your
have
previous
the
pins.
that's where we have the other pins. Yep.
So we'll have just another section right below the TMR pins, which we have new pins. So go check those out. And why don't you buy two while you're there? And then
Hey, it all goes directly to helping us run the show, pay for the hosting, and plan cool things like Sparklight campaigns and other things that we've got in the pipeline. So one of the other things that we got from social media was a collection of 18th century Masonic toasts and songs,
Nice.
which I will post this to the show notes page. But looking through it, it is pretty cool. I mean, we even have the Tyler's toast, where
awesome.
yeah, and songs of Masonic merriment. If you remember back to our Robert Burns episode, there were a couple songs about Masonry and Robert Burns poems as well. And then, of course, there was a good bit of scotch for Robert Burns Night back in January.
So to add to that, the Patriot Lodge did a table lodge for our Scottish brethren who were in town. We had a group of brethren who came and went around Northern Virginia and went to different degrees and the like. And we held a table lodge, had the Scottish brethren there, and one thing that they added was their Masonic toasts, where they toasted the Queen and a couple of others, and it was, again, something I had not seen here in the States, and so it was a very nice, beautiful touch to the end of the night.
And I wanted to bring up one last thing about this topic before we go into our final thoughts, and it was kind of interesting. When I was doing the research on this topic, a fraternal organization popped up on my Google search, and it was the International Order of Good Templars, and so I mentioned them earlier in the broadcast. And what's really interesting about them is I think they were international organization of Good Templars, and what it was actually, it was originally called the Knights of Jericho, and what had happened was a guy who I believe was a Freemason transformed this organization into the Order of Good Templars, and their motto was friendship, hope, and charity, that they later changed to faith, hope, and charity. The organizational structure is almost identical to Freemasonry. They were called lodges. They had 3 degrees. They had a chief Templar as their head. And it was kind of interesting that there was an entire fraternal organization dedicated to the creation of total abstinence, prohibition in the United States, that was actually based off of the foundations of Freemasonry.
Interesting.
So if that's not weird, I don't know what is.
Wow.
One other thing that we forgot to mention today is there's a little pseudo semi-Masonic group called the International Order of the Turtles, which is some of you know, some of our Masonic Roundtable brethren are not actually initiated into that, but that was a very fun-loving little pseudo society that came about out of World War II, and it's just a stupid little society, but there are no dues, which is awesome, and if you answer a bunch of questions correctly, you get your own little laminated dues card if you have a laminator. Otherwise, you just get a little dues card. But it was kind of founded as a fun society where friends and brethren and their spouses and families could just get together and have a drink or two with each other and just be merry.
I have made my wife a turtle, which is exciting. And that's all I'm going to say about that. What else do you have, Jason?
Oh, let's see. I've actually had people asking me if I'm a turtle. So Simon Dick, I owe you a drink, buddy. And so we also had Joseph Vanderstelt saying TMR, pressuring Masons to drink since 2015, and we're not actually pressuring people to drink here, but.
Wow.
It's this has been kind of a crazy show, so thanks so much for bearing with us, guys. We've had a lot of fun with this one, especially, as you can tell. So I shouldn't have talked about the turtle thing. I'm gonna owe all the listeners drinks.
Here we go.
Simon Dick is the first one, so he gets the drink. No one else does.
Send it UPS.
Yes. I'll steal one of John Ruark's craft brews and.
Yes, I need to do that. So actually, that's one thing I'll start to wrap up with. Yeah, given the time frame, let's start going around the table and wrapping up. I'll save myself for the last, and I'll let Nick go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, John. It's really interesting. I did a lot of research into this. I've actually written a blog post concerning this topic that I wrote, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe, something like that, and my opinions have kind of not so much changed as much as been tempered, if you will, on the idea of table lodges. I love them. I absolutely love them. I just always, am mindful of all the things that you got to do to make one go through without a hitch. So yeah, totally have fun at them. Totally have a ball, and I think they're one of the greatest things ever. Especially if you are in a place that you can do an entered apprentice table lodge, and you have all the things that you need for it, do it. It's awesome, and it really does feel like you're going back in time to our original origins, especially if you've read all the exposés from the 1700s. You sit there and you feel like, so this is how Masonry looked like at that time period. Awesome. So with that, my blog, millennialfreemason.com, 2 L's, 2 N's, boom, thank you.
Word. Thank you, Nick. Juan Sepulveda, final thoughts and shameless plugs.
All right. I definitely respect and I honor the rules and regulations of my Grand Lodge. I understand that the men that are part of the leadership of my Grand Lodge are smart men that have the best interest for our fraternity. So there have to be reasons beyond my understanding for why there is such restriction when it comes to alcoholic beverages in our state. I wish to understand more. I want to continue to learn more about it because personally I feel that there might be a place for some flexibility when it comes to the topic, and it particularly or especially since wine is a very important component of one of our degrees or several of our degrees. So this is something that there's room for us to continue to learn, continue to grow, but my point of view has always been from the very beginning that in order for us to be able to exercise temperance, there has to be access to the elements that are going to put it to the test. And if there is an officer in the line of officers of the lodge whose responsibility is to make sure that the brothers are temperate and keep control of themselves, there has to be access to the elements that are going to put that to the test. So, you know, I'm curious about what's going to happen in the future. I'm sure the topic is going to continue to come up as the years go by, and I personally I find it to be a very nice component of camaraderie and fellowship, and when you're able to sit with a brother and share a drink. So I'm curious to see what happens in the future. I appreciate every brother that has taken the time to join the conversations for the Masonic Roundtable. Brothers, if there's any topic that we didn't discuss in this discussion, anything that we missed, let us know what happens in your jurisdiction. Is alcohol allowed? Is it not? And how do you feel about it? We want to hear all those opinions. So go to the Masonic Roundtable and comment in the comment section of the website, which is the same place you're going to go to find out how to buy the pins and all that. And finally, I have been producing constantly episodes of the Winding Stairs, and today we finally solved some of the problems and some of the reasons why you haven't seen or heard any of them. I'm up to episode 31 and nobody knows about it, but in the next couple of days, that's
not good marketing.
Yeah,
we fixed
I
it.
kept on putting episodes out there. I'm like, what happened? No one's listening. But it's fixed, and particularly the topic, we continue to focus on rituals, habits, and making a rough ashlar perfect. So go to thewindingstairs.com for more information.
So Juan, wait. You've got to tell me, what is that black triangular thing behind you?
Oh, this thing.
What is that?
Aside from a work of beauty.
Thank you very much. This is the latest addition to freemasonryart.com. It is a pin display apron inspired by one of the versions of the Knights Templar apron. So it's available right now. Brothers are already purchasing it, and it helps you display your York Right Body pins and airplane pins if you have them.
And TMR pins.
Ooh.
Look at that.
And I can get that at freemasonryart.com?
freemasonryart.com.
Wow. That's a handsome pin there.
Thank you very much.
On a very handsome banner. Okay, so definitely, brothers, check that out. And definitely inspired by the 1800s Knights Templar apron. A thing of beauty and a thing that definitely stands the test of time. Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, brother.
Jason Richards.
Hey, so I wanted to echo Juan's sentiments in saying, hey, if there are aspects of this particular show or any of our shows that we missed, let us know. Keep the discussion going, but please keep it respectful, especially when you're talking about your own Grand Lodge policies, because you take an oath to make sure that you support those Grand Lodge officers and those Grand Lodge policies. It doesn't mean you have to agree with every single thing that is done or said or comes out of the Grand Line, but your very honor as a Mason rests on you following the direction of your officers, both supreme at the Grand Lodge level and subordinate at your own lodge and district level. So just when you're commenting about Facebook or weighing in on what your Grand Lodge policies are, just make sure that that you pay respect to whom respect is due.
Yeah.
Off the soapbox. Now, as far as alcohol is concerned, I think it can be a fantastic social enabler, but it's not the end all to be all. The fraternity and the brotherhood is already there, and yes, it may have come to light in taverns, and alcohol may have helped that, but remember, Freemasonry's really existed from time immemorial, and ostensibly, alcohol may not have played a role in its original formation. We just don't know. But as far as alcohol being in lodge, I kind of take a middle road and say that, for degree work and lodge business meetings, it's not really necessary. But I think, having alcohol on the premises afterward, so that brethren, don't have to go to another establishment, I don't really see too much wrong with that. But it's really up to your Grand Lodge, and not really up to us. But I think we could take it either way. As Donnie Dillon and a couple of the other guys mentioned, there are a lot of lodge brethren that go to establishments afterwards and really continue that fellowship that they didn't get in the business meeting where you're going around the committees and reading the minutes. So, my name is Jason Richards. I've got a blog. It's down here for you audio listeners. It is The 2-Foot Ruler, Masonry in Plain Language. I am also a regular contributor, more or less, to the Midnight Freemasons. So check them out. We've got a bunch of different quality Masonic authors, Brother Robert Johnson, Brian Shimian, Adam Thayer, and even Judy Gordon, who's a former Joby. They're all fantastic people that have a lot of really good stuff to say. Articles come out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so go check it out. It's always good quality. Also, you need to check out Whence Came You, Robert Johnson's podcast. He's doing a pin pre-sale for his podcast and their pins, and they look pretty sweet. Juan did the original design for them, and they're pretty awesome. So.
And Jason made it beautiful.
And I may have. Yeah, visualized it as a pin, but they're pretty neat, and he's going to be getting those in a couple weeks. Actually, within a week, because I think he's going to try to get them out within 2 weeks. So check those out, wcypodcast.com. RJ, you can bill me later for the shameless plugs. And thanks so much for listening and putting up with us tonight and every Tuesday night. We love you guys very much. Thank you so much for the interaction, for all the pictures and memes and everything that you guys post to show that you're engaged with the show. Let us know what you want us to talk about. We get all of our best topics, including this one, from listeners like you. So go ahead and keep those floodgates of feedback open for us, and we'll see you next week.
All right, thank you, Jason. All right, as for my final thoughts, brethren, I think it's time for a temperance movement. What I mean by that is not the traditional temperance movement that came from the early days of Prohibition, but just the opposite, in the sense that with Prohibition, which we know doesn't work statistically, we really need to go back and reevaluate the assumptions that we have on some of the vices, as long as they are contained. We need to go back and reevaluate what makes things hard and fast as far as our rules. What assumptions do we have? What logical fallacies brought those assumptions in place? And so, I'm a home brewer. If you're a home brewer, let me know. Put that in the show notes. I think it's an interesting thing that something that can be very innocent, very controlled, very stable, because some people may take them to extremes, doesn't mean that it should ruin that for everybody. If you look at even our own all revered George Washington, he even bought votes by selling or giving away cider to prospective voters. that this is something that has been in part of the culture. And so, while we worship George Washington as an exemplar Mason, he too was giving away cider, giving away alcohol for votes early on in the day. Another thing to think about too, how times have changed, how technology has changed. We have things like palcohol. What is palcohol? It is powdered alcohol, where as itself it's just a powder form, but when you stir it into a drink, it makes that drink alcoholic. Is that prohibited? Is that not? What are the rules for that? So there are things that by itself, is not an alcoholic substance, but then when mixed in, it is. So there's lots of things that really can confuse things that really need to be reevaluated for the times. And I think that when you look at things like how, again, alcohol is part of the lodge experience in other places like New South Wales, does that have an impact on membership, positive or negative? We don't know. We'll have to go look at those numbers. We have the technology now to do a broad brush, data analysis of, do these activities promote or shun away prospective members and retain members. So with that, just wanted to again remind everyone that we will have Most Excellent Don McAndrews pin up on the website very soon, the next couple of days. It's a very beautiful pin, and definitely encourage you to check that out and support Alzheimer's charity while you are doing that. And while you're there, also buy a new TMR pin to support this program that you're watching, as it helps pay for our hosting costs. With that, I want to say cheers to all our watchers and listeners, and keep searching for more light. Thank you for watching. Good night.